Good evening from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. Just laughing, my hair's going a bit wonky. It's the 26th of June 2025 and the time is 5:53 p.m. I've had a lovely day, another lovely day in Planet Hellscape, aka Paradise. Sat out with the birdies in the garden for a while, and then I had my debrief and was gratified and happy to be validated that I'm not crazy. Unfortunately, my reality is quite unusual and difficult to calibrate at times, but at least I know that I'm not paranoid and not crazy, so I have the immense gift of having a mental health professional on my team who lets me know when he thinks things are a little bit not quite right, but he acknowledged that I'm getting better too after the CPAP therapy. He can see an improvement in me, and more than just mental health, but physically as well. And I'm actually very contented, to be honest. And then after that, I went to Garden City and had a late lunch, early dinner. I like the Japanese curries they have there, so I had that. And then I went to, it was quite comical actually, because I woke up with a dream about vegetables and being told that I need to eat more vegetables. So I have been a bit remiss about that in the last week or two. And so I followed through on the dream and went to Woolworths and bought a hot cooked chicken and lots of vegetables and some apples, primarily actually for Kermie and little Bo, but for me too. I need vegetables too. But it was just a bit odd having that dream, and then I had a memory of a very strange supernatural event that happened last night when I went to bed. So I wrote about that, and I read it out to my psychiatrist because, I share these things with him because it does worry me that I might eventually go crazy, And he was equally as astonished as I was by the experience, and he said, "No, you're not crazy, and how I know you're not crazy is that you were trying to figure out if you had gone crazy." He said, "Crazy people never have that level of awareness." So, sweet, very sweet. But it was a very confronting, unusual experience last night. So I'm still kind of working that out and processing it. But I wrote about it on Facebook, and my psychiatrist said it's a very wise thing to do, to just keep writing everything down, documenting everything and cleaving to your truth, because that's your level of protection right there, which is quite correct about. That's why I do it. Also, it keeps me abreast of all the strange occurrences and encounters and high strangeness and weirdness that, invariably enters or leaves my life in quite astonishing ways. If I didn't write things down and keep track of it, probably would have gone crazy long ago. But because I have years and years of diaries and years of writings on Facebook, I can actually go back over things and go, oh yeah, that's happened before. That's a repeat pattern. That's happened before. And invariably it's connected to the same, not necessarily the exact same people, but the same kind of manifestations, patterns reoccurring, which is academically interesting, but also spiritually quite challenging at times. But anyway, it is what it is, people of Earth. It's the life of a shaman, living the life cycle over and over and over again ad nauseum, occasionally healing others and occasionally healing myself into the bargain. And it can be quite painful and quite fragile making, to be fair. But if the gods didn't think that I could handle it, they wouldn't have gifted me with those life experiences, I guess. Certainly got a little bit easier as I've gotten older, shedded a lot of fear and anxiety about certain things, and even fear of other people's negative judgments has been quite freeing, actually. So there was that. The only person whose opinion of me I care about is my psychiatrist in the event that I do develop a psychosis or Alzheimer's or something really fucking awful, but so far so good. With Mama T's holding her mind, body and spirit together quite admirably and stoically and courageously. Right, on that note, I'm going to continue reading Mackintosh. And yes, we're up to the part where we broke off last night because I was actually exhausted and I was having already spirit visitors, so it was a bit distracting. And then my Kundalini opened, and that kind of freaks me out a little bit. Because I don't want to end up a spontaneous combustion, you understand. So I called it a night, and then that weird thing happened when I was settling down to sleep. I won't share it on YouTube, but I've written about it on Facebook, and I think the message will be very clear on who I think is behind that. Rightly or wrongly, I could be wrong, but it started manifesting as incubi or bilocating energy only in the last 2 months, so it gives me a fairly good idea who it's coming from. Anyway, we'll carry on reading. We got to the part where I said, let me just start from the beginning of that paragraph. So the men had sauntered back to the village, drank a bowl of kava with the chief, and then after a joyful farewell from all the lazy villagers, drove home. And so we continue from there. After dinner, according to his habit, Walker, lighting his cigar, prepared to go for a stroll. Mackintosh was suddenly seized with fear. Don't you think it's rather unwise to go out at night by yourself just now? Walker stared at him with his round blue eyes. What the devil do you mean? Remember the knife the other night? You've got those fellows' backs up. They wouldn't dare. Someone dared before. That was only a bluff. They wouldn't hurt me. They look upon me as a father. They know that whatever I do is for their own good. Mackintosh watched him with contempt in his heart. The man's self-complacency outraged him, and yet something, he knew not what, made him insist. Remember what happened this morning? It wouldn't hurt you to stay at home just tonight. I'll play piquet with you. I'll play piquet with you when I come back. The Kanaka isn't born yet, who can make me alter my plans. You'd better let me come with you. You stay where you are. Mackintosh shrugged his shoulders. He'd given the man full warning. If he did not heed it, that was his own lookout. Walker put on his hat and went out. Mackintosh began to read, but then he thought of something. Perhaps it would be as well to have his own whereabouts quite clear. He crossed over to the kitchen and, inventing some pretext, talked for a few minutes with the cook. Then he got out the gramophone and put a record on it. But while it ground out its melancholy tune, some comic song of the London Music Hall, his ear was strained for a sound away there in the night. Hypervigilance people have been there many times, unfortunately. At his elbow, the record reeled out its loudness. The words were raucous, but, notwithstanding, he seemed to be surrounded by an unearthly silence. He heard the dull roar of the breakers against the reef. He heard the breeze sigh far up in the leaves of the coconut trees. How long would it be? It was awful. He heard a hoarse laugh. Wonders will never cease. It's not often you play yourself a tune, Mac. Walker stood at the window, red-faced, bluff and jovial. Well, you see I'm alive and kicking. What were you playing for? Walter came in. Nerves a bit dicky, eh? Playing a tune to keep your pecker up. I was playing your requiem. What the devil's that? Half a bitter and a pint of stout. A rattling good song too. I don't mind how often I hear it. Now I'm ready to take your money off you at piquet. They played and Walter bullied his way to victory, bluffing his opponent, chaffing him, jeering at his mistakes, up to every dodge, browbeating him, exulting. Presently, Mackintosh recovered his coolness and, standing outside himself, as it were, he was able to take a detached pleasure in watching the overbearing old man and in his own cold reserve. Somewhere Nanuma sat quietly and awaited his opportunity. Walker won game after game and pocketed his winnings at the end of the evening in high good humour. You'll have to grow a little bit older before you stand much chance against me, Mac. The fact is, I have a natural gift for cards. Probably a card counter like my fucking sleazy card counting de facto stepfather Cornelis van der Graaf. What can I say? Paid for all his trips and cruises over to Europe all the time. That's how he paid for it, conning money out of his own friends. Fucking arsehole. But anyway, didn't bother me. I liked it when he went away on cruises and wasn't around the house threatening to rape me all the fucking time. Fuck off. Is it any wonder that I got involved with my first boyfriend at 17 and was married by 19? Trying to escape those dirty motherfuckers. Well, fell out of the fire and into the frying pan, didn't I? Darling, but it is what it is. ancient history now. I don't know that there's much gift about it when I happen to deal you 14 aces. Good cards come to good players, retorted Walker. I'd have won if I'd had your hands. He went on to tell long stories of the various occasions on which he had played cards with notorious sharpers, and to their consternation had taken all their money from them. He boasted, he praised himself, and Mackintosh listened with absorption. He wanted now to feed his hatred, and everything Walker said, every gesture, made him more detestable. At last Walker got up. Well, I'm going to turn in, he said with a loud yawn. I've got a long day tomorrow. What are you going to do? I'm driving over to the other side of the island. I'll start at 5, but I don't expect I shall get back to dinner till late. They generally dined at 7. We'd better make it 7:30 then. I guess it would be as well. Mackintosh watched him knock the ashes out of his pipe. His vitality was rude and exuberant. It was strange to think that death hung over him. A faint smile flickered in Mackintosh's cold, gloomy eyes. Would you like to come with me? Would you like me to come with you? What in God's name should I want that for? I'm using the mare and she'll have enough to do to carry me. She don't want to drag you over 30 miles of road. Perhaps you don't quite realise what the feeling is at Matautu. I think it would be safer if I came with you. Walker burst out into contemptuous laughter. You'll be a fine lot to use in a scrap. I'm not a great hand at getting the wind up. Now the smile passed from Mackintosh's eyes. To his lips. It distorted them painfully. Quem Deus vot perdere prius dementat. What the hell is that? Said Walker. Latin, answered Mackintosh as he went out. And now he chuckled. His mood had changed. He had done all he could, and the matter was in the hands of fate. He slept more soundly than he had done for weeks. When he awoke next morning, he went out. After a good night, he found a pleasant exhilaration in the freshness of the early air. The sea was a more vivid blue, the sky more brilliant than on most days. The trade wind was fresh, and there was a ripple on the lagoon as the breeze brushed over it like velvet brushed the wrong way. So I'm getting a bit cold. It's not spirits this time, it was actually cold. Sometimes you've got to discern the difference people there. Sad but true. Anyway, well, not so sad, but practical but true. He felt himself stronger and younger. He entered upon the day's work with zest. After luncheon he slept again, and as evening drew on, he had the bay saddled and sauntered through the bush. He seemed to see it all with new eyes. He felt more normal. The extraordinary thing was that he was able to put Walker out of his mind altogether. So far as he was concerned, he might never have existed. He returned late, hot after his ride, and bathed again. Then he sat on the veranda, smoking his pipe, and looked at the day declining over the lagoon. In the sunset, the lagoon, rosy and purple and green, was very beautiful. He felt at peace with the world and with himself. When the cook came out to say that dinner was ready and to ask whether he should wait, Mackintosh smiled at him with friendly eyes. He looked at his watch. "It's 7:30. Better not wait. One can't tell when the boss'll be back." The boy nodded, and in a moment Mackintosh saw him carry across the yard a bowl of steaming soup. He got up lazily, went into the dining room and ate his dinner. Had it happened? The uncertainty was amusing, and Mackintosh chuckled in the silence. The food did not seem so monotonous as usual, and even though there was hamburger steak, I think by that they mean mince, we call it mince, the cook's invariable dish when his poor invention failed him, it tasted by some miracle succulent and spiced. After dinner he strolled over lazily to his bungalow to get a book. He liked the intense stillness, and now that the night had fallen, the stars were blazing in the sky. He shouted for a lamp. Excuse me. Excuse me. And in a moment, the chink pattered over on his bare feet, piercing the darkness with a ray of light. He put the lamp on the desk and noiselessly slipped out of the room. Mackintosh stood rooted to the floor, for there, half hidden by untidy papers, was his revolver. His heart throbbed painfully, and he broke into a sweat. It was done then. He took up the revolver with a shaking hand. 4 of the chambers were empty. He paused a moment and looked suspiciously out into the night, but there was no one there. He quickly slipped 4 cartridges into the empty chambers and locked the revolver in his drawer. He sat down to wait. An hour passed, a second hour passed. There was nothing. He sat at his desk as though he were writing, but he neither wrote nor read. He merely listened. He strained his ears for a sound travelling from a far distance. At last he heard hesitating footsteps and knew it was the Chinese cook. "Ah Sung," he called. The boy came to the door. "Boss very late," he said. "Dinner no good." Mackintosh stared at him, wondering whether he knew what had happened, and whether, when he knew, he would realise on what terms he and Walker had been. He went about his work, sleek, silent, smiling, and who could tell his thoughts? "I expect he's had dinner on the way, but you must keep the soup hot at all events." The words were hardly out of his mouth when the silence was suddenly broken into by a confusion, cries and a rapid patter of naked feet. A number of natives ran into the compound, men and women and children. They crowded round Mackintosh, and they all talked at once. They were unintelligible. They were excited and frightened, and some of them were crying. Mackintosh pushed his way through them and went to the gateway. Though he had scarcely understood what they said, he knew quite well what had happened. And as he reached the gate, the dog cart arrived. The old mare was being led by a tall Kanaka, and in the dog cart crouched two men trying to hold Walker up. A little crowd of natives surrounded it. The mare was led into the yard, and the natives surged in after it. Mackintosh shouted to them to stand back, and the two policemen, appearing suddenly from God knows where, pushed them violently aside. But now he had managed to understand that some lads who had been fishing on their way back to the village had come across the cart on the home side of the ford. The mare was nuzzling about the herbage, and in the darkness they could just see the great white bulk of the old man sunk between the seat and the dashboard. At first they thought he was drunk, and they peered in, grinning, but then they heard him groan, and guessed that something was amiss. They ran to the village and called for help. 'Twas when they returned, accompanied by 100 people, that they discovered Walker had been shot. With a sudden thrill of horror, Mackintosh asked himself whether he was already dead. The first thing, at all events, was to get him out of the cart, and that, owing to Walker's corpulence, was a difficult job. It took 4 strong men to lift him. They jolted him, and he uttered a dull groan. He was still alive. At last they carried him into the house, up the stairs, and placed him on his bed. Then Mackintosh was able to see him, for in the yard, lit only by 6 hurricane lamps, everything had been obscured. Walker's white ducks were stained with blood, and the men who had carried him wiped their hands, red and sticky, on their lavas. Mackintosh held up the lamp. He had not expected the old man to be so pale. His eyes were closed. He was breathing still. His pulse could be just felt, but it was obvious that he was dying. Mackintosh had not bargained for the shock of horror that convulsed him. He saw that the native clerk was there, and, in a voice hoarse with fear, told him to go into the dispensary and get what was necessary for a hypodermic injection. One of the policemen had brought up the whisky, and Mackintosh forced a little into the old man's mouth. The room was crowded with natives. They sat about the floor, speechless now and terrified, and every now and then one wailed aloud. It was very hot, but Mackintosh felt cold. His hands and his feet were like ice, and he had to make a violent effort not to tremble in all his limbs. He did not know what to do. He did not know if Walker was bleeding still, and if he was, how he could stop the bleeding. The clerk brought the hypodermic needle. "You give it to him," said Mackintosh. "You're more used to that sort of thing than I am." His head ached horribly. It felt as though all sorts of little savage things were beating inside it, trying to get out. They watched for the effect of the injection. Presently Walker opened his eyes slowly. He did not seem to know where he was. "Keep quiet," said Mackintosh. "You're at home. You're quite safe." Walker's lips outlined a shadowy smile. "They got me," he whispered. "I'll get Jervis to send his motorboat to our pier at once. We'll get a doctor out by tomorrow afternoon." There was a long pause before the old man answered. "I shall be dead by then." A ghastly expression passed over Mackintosh's pale face. He forced himself to laugh. "What rot! You keep quiet and you'll be right as rain." "Give me a drink," said Walter. "A stiff one." With shaking hand, Mackintosh poured out whisky and water, half and half, and held the glass while Walker drank greedily. It seemed to restore him. He gave a long sigh, and a little colour came into his great, fleshy face. Mackintosh felt extraordinarily helpless. He stood and stared at the old man. "If you'll tell me what to do, I'll do it," he said. "There's nothing to do. Just leave me alone. I'm done for." He looked dreadfully pitiful as he lay on the great bed, a huge, bloated old man, but so wan, so weak, it was heart-rending. As he rested, his mind seemed to grow clearer. "You were right, Mac," he said presently. "You warned me. I wish to God I'd come with you. You're a good chap, Mac, only you don't drink." There was another long silence, and it was clear that Walker was sinking. There was an internal hemorrhage, and even Mackintosh, in his ignorance, could not fail to see that his chief had but an hour or two to live. He stood by the side of the bed, stock still. For half an hour perhaps Walker lay with his eyes closed. Then he opened them. "They'll give you my job," he said slowly. "Last time I was in Apia, I told them you were all right. Finish my road. I want to think that'll be done all round the island. I don't want your job. You'll get all right. Walker shook his head wearily. I've had my day. Treat them fairly, that's the great thing. They're children. You must always remember that. You must be firm with them, but you must be kind, and you must be just. I've never made a bob out of them. I haven't saved £100 in 20 years. The road's the great thing. Get the road finished. Something very like a sob was wrung from Mackintosh. You're a good fellow, Mac. I always liked you. He closed his eyes, and Mackintosh thought that he would never open them again. His mouth was so dry that he had to get himself something to drink. The Chinese cook silently put a chair for him. He sat down by the side of the bed and waited. He did not know how long a time passed. The night was endless. Suddenly one of the men sitting there broke into uncontrollable sobbing, loudly like a child, and Mackintosh grew aware that the room was crowded by this time with natives. They sat all over the floor on their haunches, men and women, staring at the bed. What are all these people doing here? Said Mackintosh. You've got no right. Turn them out. Turn them out. All of them. His words seemed to rouse Walker, for he opened his eyes once more, and now they were all misty. He wanted to speak, but he was so weak that Mackintosh had to strain his ears to catch what he said. Let them stay. They're my children. They ought to be here. Mackintosh turned to the natives. Stay where you are. He wants you, but be silent. A faint smile came over the old man's white face. Come nearer, he said. Mackintosh bent over him. His eyes were closed, and the words he said were like a wind singing through the fronds of the coconut trees. Give me another drink. I've got something to say. This time Mackintosh gave him his whisky neat. Walker collected his strength in a final effort of will. Don't make a fuss about this. In 95, when there were troubles, white men were killed and the fleet came and shelled the villages. A lot of people were killed who'd had nothing to do with it. They're damned fools at Apia. If they make a fuss, they'll only punish the wrong people. I don't want anyone punished. He paused for a while to rest. You must say it was an accident. No one's to blame. Promise me that. I'll do anything you like, whispered Mackintosh. Good chap, one of the best. Their children. I'm their father. A father don't let his children get into trouble if he can help it. A ghost of a chuckle came out of his throat. It was astonishingly weird and ghastly. You're a religious chap, Mac. What's that about forgiving them, you know? For a while, Mackintosh did not answer. His lips trembled. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's right. Forgive them. I've loved them, you know. Always loved them. Jesus. A little bit synchronous there too. For the love of all the gods. Wow. He sighed. His lips faintly moved, and now Mackintosh had to put his ears quite close to them in order to hear. Hold my hand, he said. Mackintosh gave a gasp. His heart seemed wrenched. He took the old man's hand, so cold and weak, a coarse, rough hand, and held it in his own. And thus he sat until he nearly started out of his seat, for the silence was suddenly broken by a long rattle. It was terrible and unearthly. Walker was dead. Then the natives broke out with loud cries. The tears ran down their faces and they bet their breasts. Mackintosh disengaged his hand from the dead man's and, staggering like one drunk with sleep, he went out of the room. He went to the locked drawer in his writing desk and took out the revolver. He walked down to the sea and walked into the lagoon. He waded out cautiously so that he should not trip against a coral rock till the water came to his armpits. Then he put a bullet through his head. An hour later, half a dozen slim brown sharks were splashing and struggling at the spot where he fell. The end. I'll just see how long this next story is. Okay, it's a short one. Okay, we'll continue on, people of Earth. Comical title. The Three Fat Women of Antibes. Well, fat is a feminist issue, my darlings. One was called Mrs. Richmond, and she was a widow. The second was called Mrs. Sutcliffe. She was American, and she had divorced 2 husbands. The third was called Miss Hickson, and she was a spinster. Pardon me. They were all in the comfortable 40s, and they were all well off. Mrs. Sutcliffe had the odd first name of Arrow. When she was young and slender, she had liked it well enough. It suited her, and the jests it occasioned, though too often repeated, were very flattering. She was not disinclined to believe that it suited her character too. It suggested directness, speed, and purpose. She liked it less now that her delicate features had grown muzzy with fat, that her arms and shoulders were so substantial and her hips so massive. It was increasingly difficult to find dresses to make her look as she liked to look. The jests her name gave rise to now were made behind her back, and she very well knew that they were far from obliging. But she was by no means resigned to middle age. She still wore blue to bring out the colour of her eyes, and with the help of art, her fair hair had kept its lustre. What she liked about Beatrice Richmond and Frances Hickson was that they were both so much fatter than she. It made her look quite slim. They were both of them older and much inclined to treat her as a little young thing. It was not disagreeable. They were good-natured women, and they chaffed her pleasantly about her beau ending with an X, meaning plural beau. They had both given up the thought of that kind of nonsense. Indeed, Miss Hickson had never given it a moment's consideration, but they were sympathetic to her flirtations. It was understood that one of these days Arrow would make a third man happy. Ha ha! I mean, you have to laugh, don't you, darlings? Only you mustn't get any heavier, darling, said Mrs. Richmond. And for goodness sake, make certain of his bridge, said Miss Hickson. They saw for her a man of about 50, but well preserved and of distinguished carriage, an admiral on the retired list, and a good golfer, or a widower without encumbrances, meaning without children, people. But in any case, with a substantial income. Arrow listened to them amiably and kept to herself the fact that this was not at all her idea. It was true that she should have liked to marry again, but her fancy turned to a dark, slim Italian with flashing eyes and a sonorous title, or to a Spanish don of noble lineage, and not a day more than 30. There were times when, looking at herself in the mirror, she was certain that she did not look any more than that herself. They were great friends, Miss Hickson, Mrs. Richmond, and Arrow Sutcliffe. It was their fat that had brought them together, and bridge that had cemented their alliance. They had met first at Carlsbad, where they were staying at the same hotel, and were treated by the same doctor who used them with the same ruthlessness. Beatrice Richmond was enormous. She was a handsome woman with fine eyes, rouged cheeks, and painted lips. She was very well content to be a widow with a handsome fortune. She adored her food. She liked bread and butter, cream, potatoes, and suet puddings, and for 11 months of the year ate pretty well everything she had a mind to, and for 1 month went to Carlsbad to reduce. But every year she grew fatter. She upbraided the doctor but got no sympathy from him. He pointed out to her various plain and simple facts. But if I'm never to eat a thing I like, life isn't worth living, she expostulated. He shrugged his disapproving shoulders. Afterwards she told Miss Hickson that she was beginning to suspect he wasn't so clever as she had thought. Miss Hickson gave a great guffaw. She was that sort of woman. She had a deep bass voice, a large, flat, sallow face, from which twinkled little bright eyes. She walked with a slouch, her hands in her pockets, and when she could do so without exciting attention, smoked a long cigar. I used to like those long cigarillos. They were called Moors. I don't think you can buy them anymore. I haven't been able to find them. They were very heavy on nicotine, so they were highly addictive. They had more nicotine than normal cigarettes, like each one. They were long. They were like this, long and brown. I mean, I occasionally smoke wee Willems that are about this size. This size. Size does matter, people. Okay. But the cigarillos were about that long and, well, not very thick. But they were, there were a lot of nicotine. But I tell you what, I only had to smoke one and I was like, I've had a cigarette today, I'm quite satisfied, I don't want any more for another 6 months. That's how it used to go, actually. It'd be a mood. It's still a mood thing for me when I crave a cigarette. I bought little wee Willem cigars instead because, well, they're not healthier than cigarettes. They also have a fair bit of nicotine in them, but I only need one and then I'm contented and I don't have an urge to smoke for again. Weeks or months can go by. So, yes. But yes, I know what she means about those long cigars. They're quite satisfying, actually. Right, I've lost where we were now, stopping with that little segue about cigars. Let me just peruse. Ah, yes, here we are. She dressed as like a man as she could. What the deuce should I look like in frills and furbelows, she said. When you're as fat as I am, you may just as well be comfortable. She's got a point there. She wore tweeds and heavy boots, and whenever she could, went out bareheaded. But she was as strong as an ox, and boasted that few men could drive a longer ball than she. I think they're talking about golf here, you understand. She was plain of speech. I was trying to do that without laughing at my own joke, but I couldn't help myself, people. Anyway, she was plain of speech, and she could swear more variously than a stevedore. My kind of girl. Though her name was Frances, she preferred to be called Frank. Masterful, but with tact, it was her jovial strength of character that held the three together. They drank their waters together, had their baths at the same hour, they took their strenuous walks together, pounded about the tennis court with a professional to make them run, Oh, sorry, I shouldn't laugh. And ate at the same table their sparse and regulated meals. Nothing impaired their good humour but the scales, and when one or other of them weighed as much on one day as she had the day before, neither Frank's coarse jokes, the bonhomie of Beatrice, nor Arrow's pretty kittenish ways sufficed to dispel the gloom. Then drastic measures were resorted to. The culprit went to bed for 24 hours, and nothing passed her lips but the doctor's famous vegetable soup, which tasted like hot water in which a cabbage, had been well rinsed. Can't think of anything worse. Only because my father used to make me drink the water that they boiled our vegetables in for all our meals. He would pour the water that the vegetables had cooked in, often Brussels sprouts, which I really hate even to this day. And then he'd pour the water out and he'd put a bit of salt and pepper on it, and I was supposed to drink that after every meal. Can't think of anything. It's weird because I do like bouillon. Bouillon is like, a beef type bovril, like kind of like a Vegemite type thing. Yeah, you probably could do it with Vegemite. It's got a slightly different flavour. And you put a teaspoon of that in a cup of, boiling water, and it tastes like beef soup kind of thing. It's quite nourishing in winter actually when you've been sick and you've had a flu and you don't have much appetite. My mother used to make me bouillon. Suppose because the vitamin B, boosts me up a bit. I quite like that. But the awful fucking cooked vegetable water, please. What a mad idea. But however, I shouldn't criticise too much because my old man died 3 days before his 89th birthday, so must have worked out for him okay. We're going to segue because it's the second time I've mentioned it, but it's kind of funny. I dreamt this morning about being told by Spirit that I need to eat more vegetables. I'm going to read it to you after all because it's a well-written piece of prose, if I say so myself, and it's kind of funny that this has been a bit of a theme today. It's funny how some days have their own little magical little themes, isn't it? For synchronicities. Right. Let me just scroll back because I've got to get back to this morning because I also share memories each day and it can take up a bit of scrollage. Oh, pardon me. Alright, here we go, people of Earth. You ready? You can, if you're not interested in listening to my dreams and weird spiritual life, you can go and make yourself a cup of tea or press the red button with the square in the middle of it. I don't mind at all. You're not prisoners of my love. You're free to come and go as you please according to thine own, predilections. 7:37 a.m. I woke up to a vision of lots of roasted vegetables. You need to eat better. Nurture that body, mind and spirit, Tanya. Enough people have tried to kill you, even in recent memory, with their foul treachery. You don't need to suicide as well. Eat the fucking vegetables. I wake to full consciousness, kicking my synapses into all 4 cylinders. What the fuck? Chocolate is a vegetable? Lol. My mind is so resonant and crisp this morning I could strike a match off that formidable bitch and burn all that evil foulness down. Phoenix rising. Let's go, bitches. Sniggers. It's a beautiful morning, also crisp and clear, sunny, 10 degrees Celsius. I lie cosseted on my electric blanket, still tired too, only 6 hours sleep. But here we go, babies, or bitches, according to thy predilections. Another day in paradise, planet hellscape, where the motherfuckery is immense. But, like a wild, wise berserker queen, the Mama T rises above it, rides through it, dances over it. Get that for me, Deirdre? Stomps those damned mofos down into the blood-soaked, pus-ridden, rotting ground, then kisses new life into the worthy ones. Would you like vegetables with that? Fricasseed chips, mouleed pumpkin, dropped from a tall building, soup du jour? Yeah? Nah, I didn't think so. 1 block of Whittaker's left. I take my vegetables, sweet, laced with cacao and Quetzalcoatl's irony. You're gonna die, Tanya. Yeah, I know. But when I go, it will be not with a whimper, but a blazing, almighty, celebratory bang. Enough fucking around with mediocrity and bathos and other people's shit-stained cowardice. Whistle up the spirits of fight and smite. Fill me up with grace and delight. Ennobled, honorific, amidst the horrific. Free in another paradigm. They have no idea. Lackluster curves. Watching the world destroy itself over something less than vegetables is going to be wild. Bring the popcorn. Oh wait, shit. That's a vegetable too. Miss Five and her infamous stolid rebellion. But I digress. It's been a long, hard life with lots of digressions. But the road is straight and climbs over many mountains, and when you reach the top, you get to fly over it, watch the naked primate cosplays, and laugh until you split a rib. Call me when it's over. I have things to take care of. Copyright Tiny Desiree Aarons, of course. So I thought I would share that with you because we're on the subject of vegetables and it reminded me what I wrote this morning. Well rinsed bloody cabbage water. Ugh. Never were 3 women greater friends. They would have been independent of anyone else if they had not needed a 4-foot bridge. They were fierce, enthusiastic players, and the moment the day's cure was over, they sat down at the bridge table. Arrow, feminine as she was, played the best game of the three, a hard, brilliant game in which she showed no mercy and never conceded a point or failed to take advantage of a mistake. Beatrice was solid and reliable. Frank was dashing. She was a great theorist and had all the authorities at the tip of her tongue. Sorry, I just had to laugh. That has a whole different connotation if you happen to be, a masculine lesbian. Let's just put that delicately, darlings. Anyway. No offence to the LGBTIQ community, but they would get why I find that funny. Let's just repeat it just for effect. And had all the authorities at the tip of her tongue. Some have said more, could be sexist and racist and all sorts of things, I guess. But that was just quirky. That just made me giggle. They had long arguments over the rival systems. They bombarded one another with Culbertson and Sims. It was obvious that not one of them ever played a card without 15 good reasons, but it was also obvious from the subsequent conversation that there were 15 equally good reasons why she should not have played it. Life would have been perfect, even with the prospect of 24 hours of that filthy soup when the doctors Russian, Beatrice, bloody Frank, a lousy Arrow, Scales pretended one hadn't lost an ounce in 2 days, if only there had not been this constant difficulty of finding someone to play with them who was in their class. We're talking about bridge here, by the way. Just needed to remind everyone. It's funny, Case took up bridge as well as claviers in later years. Quite liked bridge. Guess it was an opportunity to sit around with more women and flirt. Anything for the crusade, darlings. Anything. It was for this reason that, on the occasion with which this narrative deals, Frank invited Lena Finch to come and stay with them at Antibes. They were spending some weeks there on Frank's suggestion. It seemed absurd to her, with her common sense, that immediately the cure was over, Beatrice, who always lost 20 pounds, should be giving way to her ungovernable appetite. Put it all on again. Well, this is what happens when you're on yo-yo diets, people there. That's why the mama tea never ever diets. Diet is a 4-letter word that happens to have the word die in it. Die. Die. Anyway, I never saw the point in it because you know why? My mother was a yo-yo dieter. She was always strung out on sleeping pills and Valium and slimming pills. Right out of that character. What was the actress's name now? In Requiem for the Dream, the one that was tearing her hair out because she was, on uppers and downers and not coke. That was my mother. When I saw that movie, oh, come on, what's the name of that actor? Oh, it's going to drive me mad. Oh, it was Lee Rennick. Was it Lee Rennick? Let's double check. Anyway, when I saw that movie, I was actually sitting on the couch with my stoner boyfriend. And we were looking at that movie and I looked at her literally ripping her hair out in bunches. And I turned to Courtney and I said, my mother used to do that in the early 70s. He said, Jesus, really? I went, yeah. He went, you never mix your uppers and your downers. Never, ever, ever. He said, every druggie knows that. I said, well, nobody bothered to tell my mother that. I said, she was a fucking wreck. She used to grind her teeth. Like, she had dentures, by the way. But she'd come out to me tearing her hair and she'd be like, like a wild fucking animal, and eyes all spinning and wild and out of fucking control. And she'd look at me and she'd say, she'd have moments of insight, because she was a highly intelligent woman, my mother, and she wasn't fucking being a maniac. But anyway, highly intelligent, give her that, you have to be fair, everyone's got their good qualities. She'd look at me and with this moment of clarity she would say, you're not, darling, whipping at her hair. I think these slimming tablets are not agreeing with me. I can't stop grinding my teeth. And I just look at her and go, you think, mummy? Oh, you're not, darling. I think I'm going to have to go off them. But when I go off them, I get so fat. And I was like, well, you didn't seem to lose much weight anyway, mummy, so you might as well just be fat and handle it. Oh, and then she had this 1973 or 74, we were living in Melbourne by that stage with Case. Yes, it must have been 1974. Then she took to drinking that god-awful diet drink, Tab, T-A-B. Remember that, people of Earth? The Tab? Oh, it was vile. And then she'd say, you need to drink this, Tanya. It is a diet drink. I'm not on a diet, mummy. Like, why would I want to drink that? But I have to drink it, so you have to drink it too. But I want real lemonade with real sugar. And, like, I don't want these Clayton's drinks. Give me something real for the love of all the gods. Well, I didn't say all the gods in those days. In those days, I was a little Lutheran girl and not have dreamed of invoking all the gods. That only kicked in after about the 10th near death, you understand, when I realised I need to be what's the word? How do I call it? I need to be a universal person, include all the gods in my armouring and in my playbook, because it's just, there's a reason why it's the multiverse. Hello, all is one and one is all. But anyway, I would not have dared say to her all the gods. But I don't want diet products. I said, it's not good for you, mummy. It makes you ill. I worked that out as a child. Do you know how many people that were on the Weight Watchers diet I had to talk down and said the reason why you're strung out and, you're constantly on this emotional fucking roller coaster is all the chemicals in your freaking diet products. They're killing you. What they said? What? So go and read it. Read what's in that. I said, you're better off to eat real butter, in smaller quantities. Maybe cut it out on your toast. Just have avocado without butter, because there's enough fat in avocado. All right, spread your cheese on your toast when you melt it. Don't bother putting extra butter in. Just limit it down a bit. And have real sugar, but less of it. Like cut it out of your tea, for example. Oh, but it tastes bloody awful, actually. After you get used to not having sugar in your tea, it tastes like tea. And when you put sugar in your tea after having weaned off all sugar in your tea, then it tastes bloody awful. So sickly sweet, you just about vomit. You wonder how you ever used to have 2 or 3 sugars in it. What they said? It's just a matter of adapting your taste buds. The only thing I refuse to quit on is chocolate, by the gods. Wow. It's my one little bloody naughty little pleasure and crutch in life. It's all I've got left. But oh no, that Requiem for the Dream. Oh yeah, that's right, we were Googling it. Where were we? Let's Google it. Actress ATACTRESS. In Requiem. Fabulous fucking movie. Life altering. I just stood there in shock. I think I literally fell off the couch. I said to Courtney, that there is my mother. That was my childhood. Oh my God, he said. Oh my fucking God. And then he kind of looked at me with a modicum of admiration. That was just one of the things I survived. I'm wrong, it's not Lynn Rennick. Ellen Burstyn. Ellen bloody Burstyn. You think I would remember, wouldn't you? There she is. Fabulous woman. Fabulous. Come on. Get rid of that weird afterglow. Well, anyway, I can't get her photo to show up on the screen, so Google it yourself. She's got a sweet, lovely face. And the daughter was Jennifer Connolly, and Mrs. Miles was Charlotte Aronofsky. Addiction. It's a very nasty thing that can happen to a human being, and I've had to deal with it a lot in my time. Friends, daughters that was a heroin addict, and my own mother with her uppers and downers addiction, love addictions and other weird fucking anomalies. It's a human condition, people. Many people have a crutch of one kind or the other. You give up one addiction, you end up with another one. Like, I'm often bemused in YouTube comment sections, all the people that say, oh, I've been sober for, 4 years and 3 days and 6 hours or whatever, which I always think is commendable, because it's not easy to get off drugs, people of earth. But then they said, it's all because of Jesus and, the light of Jesus, and they bang on about it, and I think you've just swapped one crutch for another. No offence to anyone who's religious, but that too can be an addiction and a crutch. I like the ones when they comment and say, I got off all the drugs and then I just lived my life like a normal person. That's fucking admirable. Really admirable. Because they didn't swap it for another addiction. They just got through life somehow being, on the straight and narrow and living their best life and, not being these fanatic maniacs that some of them turn into. Oh dear God, I know that's come out wrong, but it's not my intention. I mean, you hear me say, oh dear God, the gods and that. I invoke them too, but I'm not addicted to them. There's a difference. I used to be a good Jewish girl. I wasn't addicted to that either. Just did the thing, raising my children, and did the respectable Jewish things. And now I've got real and I live my best life. Sometimes, when people aren't trying to destroy me out of just sheer lackluster bored rich people's games and envies and petty jealousies and sadomasochism, whatever the fuck's grinding their gears these days. So, obsessions and control dramas. Fuck off. Anyway, where was I? Right. Beatrice, having lost 20 pounds, would immediately stack it right back on again. Beatrice was weak. I don't know if it's weakness. It's just she has a food addiction, likes food. Right, it happens, especially if you're a trauma survivor. A lot of addictions stem from, early childhood trauma too. So no real judgment there. If Jesus gets you through your day, fine. I don't really care. How does that impact on my day? If you eat, like at one stage when I was under the influence of Abilify, or might have been Zyprexa, I can't remember which. I had a craving for I laugh about it and it wasn't funny at the time. But I had a craving for those Woolworths chocolate mud cakes. In those days you could get a whole cake for $5. And I had a habit of one a day for about a week. And very quickly I piled on 20 kilos of weight too in about a week from eating all that cake for breakfast, lunch and tea. But it was the antipsychotic making me so fucking hungry and craving sweets and comfort and, oh dear goddess. Anyway, so there's no judge. I'm not judging anyone. We all have our thing. We all have our bag. Some people are sex addicts. Some people are addicted to gambling. Some people, going for the hardcore opioids, the heroin, the morphine and the fentanyl and whatever other shit. Some people just like, eating. Some people are addicted to not eating and starving themselves, that kind of weird self-punishment thing. That's awful, but, I understand. I understand that they're trying to maintain control over their body, mind and spirit, and they're rigid and they're controlling, and it's around not eating. Some people are addicted to sport. Some people are addicted to shopping. Some people are addicted to alcohol, which is very problematic, especially in Australian society. Some people are addicted to belittling and humiliating other people and think it's a bit of a blood sport and a game. Motherfuckers. Some people are addicted to, I don't know, collecting things. Some people are addicted to hoarding. And so on and so forth. Some people are addicted to buying cars. Whatever, however it manifests. But it all relates to some kind of things gone wrong in the brain wiring. You need equilibrium, equanimity, balance, people. It's a very fine line to walk sometimes. Sometimes keeping in balance. Right, where was I? Beatrice was weak. She needed a person of strong will to watch her diet. She proposed then that on leaving Carlsbad, they should take a house at Antibes, where they could get plenty of exercise. Everyone knew that nothing slimmed you like swimming, and as far as possible could go on with the cure. With a cook of their own, they could at least avoid things that were obviously fattening. There was no reason why they should not all lose several pounds more. It seemed a very good idea. Beatrice knew what was good for her, and she could resist temptation. Well enough if temptation was not put right under her nose. Besides, she liked gambling. See what I just said? Just swapped one addiction for the other. And a flutter at the casino 2 or 3 times a week would pass the time very pleasantly. Arrow adored Antibes, and she would be looking her best after a month at Carlsbad. She could just pick and choose among the young Italians, the passionate Spaniards, the gallant Frenchmen, and the long-limbed English who sauntered about all day in bathing trunks and gay-coloured dressing gowns. trying to think about the long-limbed Englishman I used to be in love with once upon a time. Boring. He was boring. But anyway, you get that. The plan worked very well. They had a grand time. 2 days a week they ate nothing. I shouldn't laugh. But hard-boiled eggs and raw tomatoes, and they mounted the scales every morning with light hearts. Arrow got down to 11 stone, felt just like a girl. I can't help laughing. It's not funny. It's really hard when you're a chunky mama to get that under control. So well done, girls. High five on that one. Beatrice and Frank, by standing in a certain way, just avoided the 13. Oh, dear goddess. The machine they had bought registered kilograms, and they got extraordinarily clever at translating them in the twinkling of an eye to pounds and ounces. But the fourth bridge continued to be the difficulty. This person played like a fool. The other was so slow that it drove you frantic. One was quarrelsome, another was a bad loser, a third was next door to a crook. It was strange how hard it was to find exactly the player you wanted. One morning when they were sitting in pyjamas on the terrace, overlooking the sea, drinking their tea without milk or sugar, and eating a rice prepared by Dr. Hudebat and guaranteed not to be fattening, Frank looked up from her letters. Lena Finch is coming down to the Riviera, she said. Who's she? Asked Arrow. She married a cousin of mine. He died a couple of months ago, and she's just recovering from a nervous breakdown. What about asking her to come here for a fortnight? Does she play bridge? Asked Beatrice. You bet your life she does, boomed Frank in her deep voice. And a damned good game, too. I couldn't help myself. Sorry. I get a little bit caught up in the excitement and frivolity of the literary escapades, you understand. We should be absolutely independent of outsiders. How old is she? Asked Arrow. Same age as I am. That sounds all right. It was settled. Frank, with her usual decisiveness, stalked out as soon as she had finished her breakfast to send a wire, and 3 days later Lena Finch arrived. Frank met her at the station. She was in deep but not obtrusive mourning for the recent death of her husband. Frank had not seen her for 2 years. She kissed her warmly and took a good look at her. You're very thin, darling, she said. Lena smiled bravely. I've been through a good deal lately. I've lost a lot of weight. Frank sighed, but whether from sympathy with her cousin's sad loss or from envy was not obvious. Lena was not, however, depressed, and after a quick bath was quite ready to accompany Frank to Eden Rock. Frank introduced the stranger to her 2 friends, and they sat down in what was known as the monkey house. It was an enclosure covered with glass overlooking the sea, with a bar at the back, and it was crowded with chattering people in bathing costumes, pyjamas or dressing gowns, who were seated at the tables having drinks. Beatrice's soft heart went out to the lawn window, and Arrow, seeing that she was pale, quite ordinary to look at, and probably 48, was prepared to like her very much. A waiter approached them. "What will you have, Lena dear?" Frank asked. "Oh, I don't know. What you all have? A dry martini or a white lady?" Arrow and Beatrice gave her a quick look. Everyone knows how fattening cocktails are. My very highly educated and quite brilliant sister could be as thick as two short planks when it came to common sense and practical matters. You understand. And she was always on a fucking diet because she had an obsession about, as a teenager, she was rather fat as a teenager. She was comfort feeding and fed like a fattened cow by the grooming pedophile, Uncle Trevor. So there was that. So instead of internalising that into apportioning blame where it belonged, with the fucking pedophile, she would put it into, I must not ever be fat again because then I'll be ugly, and fat is ugly, and considered my mother and myself ugly because we tended to always be on the hefty side. So, and it was just another reason for her to hate us, quite frankly, but really she was only hating herself. Which is kind of odd when you think about, why would you hate yourself when you've been victimised by some other filthy motherfucker? Let the blame reside with the perpetrator, am I right? But anyway, it's a common thing with survivors of child sexual abuse that they blame themselves and internalise it and punish themselves, and they're always victimised and they're always at fault, and so it's a common thing. It's odd, but it's a manifestation. It's a kind of like abusing yourself. When your abusers have left off, you carry on and keep doing it, kind of thing. As if it wasn't enough what you were put through as an innocent child. So, like patterns can keep repeating, although in my case I don't know why that pattern keeps repeating. The same fucking monsters but with different faces and names. Ad nauseum. Flying monkeys coming in to attack me with their evil and their filth. I certainly don't invite or encourage that, by the way. But anyway, in my sister's case, her thing was food. Food was the enemy. Food was evil. She wasn't anorectic, thank the goddess, but she really had a very bad relationship to food. And so in the look, I must have been already married. It was before I had the children, though. Well, anyway, in the mid '80s, because I got married in 1984. So we go to visit she's actually my half sister. We have different fathers, and I go to visit her and her husband and her daughter. It must have been a special occasion, like one of our birthdays or something, celebratory, not sabotaged by mofos, you understand. And so anyway, she I never forget it. It was actually quite comical, but insane. So she looks at me and she says, "I'm making pina coladas. Would you like one, Tanya?" "Oh, yes," I said. "Well, what's in a pina colada?" She said, "It's pineapple juice and coconut cream, and the coconut cream is very, very fattening." And she said, "And then you put some Bacardi or white rum in it, And the white rum, she was on this Weight Watchers kick at the time. The white rum is so many calories, and the coconut cream is so many calories, and the pineapple juice is so many calories. She's rattling off all the calories. And, I've just disassociated and left my body because I couldn't give a flying fuck, actually. I just wanted to know what it tasted like. I said, what does it taste like? She said, oh, it's the most delicious cocktail I've ever had, and it's just sweet and creamy, and, you shake it together over rice, and you'll love it, Tanya. I said, oh, yeah, I'll partake of one of those. Sounds salubrious, So she makes these lovely pina coladas, one for me, one for our mother, one for myself. I said for me, one for herself. And we're sitting there and we're sipping it and chatting. I'm really enjoying this lovely drink. And then she looks at me and she says, do you know how many calories you're drinking right there? Do you know why you're fat? Do you know what you're drinking? 2,000 calories a glass. Do you know how many calories you're allowed to have as a dietary allowance each day? 2,000. You've just had an entire day's worth of food in one drink, and that's why you're fat. After offering me this lovely drink and preparing this lovely drink for me, watching me drink the lovely drink, she then had to, turn it ugly. I just fucking looked at her. I said, oh, in that case, you better give me another one and I'll have 4,000 calories and I'll be even fatter then, won't I? Oh, she was a cow. She really was a cow. But anyway, it was just reminded me of that. It's true that cocktails are more fattening, but they're also delicious. But they're also rather expensive when you go to a club or a bar. So I just stick to the old, Jack Daniels and Coke because I like it and I only need 2 or 3 drinks of that, and I'm not drunk, but I'm quite contented with life and keep my wits about me in the cob, which you need to do with all the fucking predators. Now I have to worry about the women as well as the men, that was a bit of a shock on what date was that? 24th of, 24th of January 2025. Fickle fingers of filthy fate. But I'm certain someone put her up to that. No normal woman behaves like that. She wasn't lesbian either, I don't think. I mean, could kind of understand it if she was a lesbian, because that's the attraction right there. It was odd. It was fucking odd. I'm still convinced someone put her up to that. It's just feral. But yeah, as I was saying, you don't just have to worry about the men being fucking out of order and creepy with you now. Now you've got to worry about the women as well. In the post-COVIDian epoch with the mother hydra babies lopping them all off and their fucking frontal lobe and probably affecting their, sexuality as well. It's just odd. Just utterly, utterly odd. But I'm just going to segue a little bit again. I had to buy a new license, driver's license. Every 5 years you renew it. Well, I renew it for 5 years, so I don't have to stress every fucking year. And it's like $200. It's not cheap, and I was stressing about that as well. But I found the money this year without too much difficulty, thank the goddess. But while I was in there, there was a young man serving behind the counter. I don't know how the conversation came up because he was actually, doing my license for me. But I mentioned to him, I said, it's getting pretty weird out in the club circuit. I said, people are just so disinhibited and fucking inappropriate, and so got sexually assaulted by a female recently. He nodded at me and went, what? A female? I went, yep. I said, can't trust anyone when you're out now, got to keep your back permanently to the wall. He said, you know what? He said, I'm experiencing the same problems but with women. Women being really disinhibited and creepy with me. He said, so it's not just you, Tanya. He said, even us blokes are having difficulty with women being, really, really sordid and sexually inappropriate. What? I said? What? He said, yep. He said, it's getting really awkward going out now, even for us blokes. I just stood back and I looked at him. I said, I'm glad you shared that information with me, I said, because I thought it was just weird shit happening to me or around me, and that it was somehow something I'm given off or doing wrong. He said, no, he said, I'm having the same problem. So there you go, people of Earth. I'm convinced it's another effect of the, that they all willingly or unwillingly fucked themselves with to please their governments. But anyway, where was I? Oh yes, everyone knows how fattening cocktails are. I dare say you're tired after your journey, said Frank kindly. I should have said that in a deeper voice. I forgot that she's got the deep voice. She ordered a dry martini for Lena and a mixed lemon and orange juice for herself and her two friends. Why would you put lemon and orange juice together? I think we used to do that in the 70s too, but it wasn't tab, it was actual. Yes, I remember now. They probably thought it was good for your health. Anyway, we find alcohol isn't very good in all this heat, she explained. Oh, it never affects me at all, Lena answered airily. I like cocktails. Oh, good on you, Lena. Good on you for being real, baby girl. Arrow went very slightly pale under her rouge. Neither she nor Beatrice ever wet their faces when they bathed, and they thought it absurd of Frank, a woman of her size, to pretend she liked diving. But she said nothing. The conversation was gay and easy. They all said the obvious things with gusto, and presently they strolled back to the villa for luncheon. In each napkin were two little anti-fat rusks. I think they mean those kind of rice cracker, like rice. They're not rice crackers, but they're, people are always trying to feed me those. I said, why would I bother? Oh, because it's not fattening. I said, why would I bother? I'm not on a diet. Oh, but it's good for you. Says who? I said. Feed me real food, people of Earth. Preferably in abundance. All my true friends know that. I'm a woman who eats with obvious gusto. Lena gave a bright smile as she put them by the side of her plate. May I have some bread? She said. Oh, bless her heart. A real woman. Thank the goddess. The grossest indecency would not have fallen on the ears of those three women with such a shock. Not one of them had eaten bread for 10 years. They need to hang out with my sister. Oh, the rigidity of the eternally hungry, by the way. Some mental aberration just in that alone. Even Beatrice, greedy as she was, drew the line there. Frank, the good hostess, recovered herself first. Of course, darling, she said, and turning to the butler asked him to bring some. And some butter, said Lena in that pleasant, easy way of hers. There was a moment's embarrassed silence. I don't know if there's any in the house, said Frank, but I'll inquire. There may be some in the kitchen. I adore bread and butter, don't you? said Lena, turning to Beatrice. Beatrice gave a sickly smile and an evasive reply. The butler brought a long, crisp roll of French bread. Oh, yum! Lena slit it in two and plastered it with the butter, which was miraculously produced. A grilled sole was served. We eat very simply here, said Frank. I hope you won't mind. Oh, no. I like my food very plain, said Lena, as she took some butter and spread it over her fish. As long as I can have bread and butter and potatoes and cream, I'm quite happy. I love this chickie. She can be my friend. The three friends exchanged a glance. Frank's great sallow face sagged a little, and she looked with distaste at the dry, insipid sole on her plate. Beatrice came to the rescue. It's such a bore. We can't go to cream here, she said. It's one of the things one has to do without. On the Riviera, fuck me if I'm on the Riviera, there better be, don't actually fuck me by the way, there better be lots of cream and pate and all the yummy things, real butter and real bread and wonderful dessert. If I'm on the Riviera, rich enough to partake of all the goodness of life, if you dare serve me diet food, there'd be a full-blown war right then and right there. All these wealthy people who can afford to eat in abundance, ravenously starving themselves on that fucking Ozempic like Sharon Osbourne and that other wonderful Australian actress who I used to adore, but she looks like a walking corpse now. Nicole Kidman. Foul it is. Foul! Anyway, quickly we must change the subject, because I will be very upset about that. But it happens to be true. Why would you willingly do that to yourself? Willingly. People came out of, Bergen-Belsen and Auschwitz. Not many, but a few did come out looking like that, imposed upon them against their will. Why would you willingly do that to your own body to please some dickhead in Hollywood? Why, people of Earth? It's anti-humanist is what it is. Mama T has spoken. What a pity, said Lena. And I agree with Lena there. I'd be out of there faster than you could say Riviera and starvation. The rest of the luncheon consisted of lamb cutlets, with the fat carefully removed so that Beatrice should not be led astray, and spinach boiled in water, with stewed pears to end up with. Stewed pears are not so bad. They're better baked though, aren't they? Yes, and butter, cinnamon, custard. Oh well, this is why I'm destined to always be a hunky chunky mama with my Bodicea ring. Babies. If you ever see me looking like a bobble doll and a toothpick bobbling around, I'm dying people of Earth. It won't be Ozempic or anything revolting like that. Lena tasted her pears and gave the butler a look of inquiry. That resourceful man understood her at once, and though powdered sugar had never been served at that table before, handed her without a moment's hesitation a bowl of it. A real man. We're keeping him in our employ. She helped herself liberally. The other three pretended not to notice. Coffee was served, and Lena took 3 lumps of sugar in hers. That's the only thing I gave up, though, was sugar and tea or coffee. Compensate for it in abundance with other things, so it's the only thing I did cut back on. You have a very sweet tooth, said Arrow, in a tone which she struggled to keep friendly. We think saccharine so much more sweetening, said Frank, as she put a tiny tablet of it into her coffee. Disgusting stuff, said Lena. I agree completely. Lena, we are soul sisters. High five on that one. Bing, bam, boom, babies. Beatrice's mouth drooped at the corners and she gave the lump sugar a yearning look. Beatrice, boomed Frank sternly. Beatrice stifled a sigh and reached for the saccharine. Frank was relieved when they could sit down to the bridge table. It was plain to her that Arrow and Beatrice were upset. She wanted them to like Lena, and she was anxious that Lena should enjoy her fortnight with them. For the first rubber, Arrow cut with the newcomer. I've no idea what they're talking about there. It must be a bridge term. Do you play Vanderbilt or Culbertson? She asked her. I have no conventions, Lena answered in a happy-go-lucky way. I play by the light of nature. I play strict Culbertson, said Arrow acidly. The 3 fat women braced themselves to the fray. No conventions indeed. They'd learn her. When it came to bridge, even Frank's family feeling was forgotten, and she settled down with the same determination as the others to trim the stranger in their midst. But the light of nature served Lena very well. She had a natural gift for the game and great experience. She played with imagination, quickly, boldly, and with assurance. The other players were in too high a class not to realise very soon that Lena knew what she was about, and since they were all thoroughly good-natured, generous women, they were gradually mollified. This was real bridge. They all enjoyed themselves. Arrow and Beatrice began to feel more kindly towards Lena, and Frank, noticing this, heaved a fat sigh of relief. It was going to be a success. Why is my hair doing weird things there? Just settle, petal. Yes, a bit better. But straggledy. After a couple of hours they parted. Frank and Beatrice to have a round of golf, and Arrow to take a brisk walk with a young Prince Rocamere, whose acquaintance she had lately made. He was very sweet and young and good-looking. Lena said she would rest. They met again just before dinner. I hope You've been all right, Lena dear, said Frank. I was rather conscience-stricken at leaving you with nothing to do all this time. Oh, don't apologize. I had a lovely sleep, and then I went down to Juan and had a cocktail, and do you know what I discovered? You'll be so pleased. I found a dear little tea shop where they've got the most beautiful, thick, fresh cream. I've ordered half a pint to be sent every day. I thought it would be my little contribution to the household. Her eyes were shining. She was evidently expecting them to be delighted. How very kind of you, said Frank, with a look that sought to quell the indignation that she saw on the faces of her two friends. But we never eat cream. In this climate it makes one so bilious. Oh my God, they really are, Angela. They really are. I shall have to eat it all myself then, said Lena cheerfully. Don't you ever think of your figure? Arrow asked with icy deliberation. The doctor said I must eat. Did he say you must eat bread and butter and potatoes and cream? Yes, that's what I thought you meant when you said you had simple food. You'll get simply enormous, said Beatrice. Lena laughed gaily. No, I shan't. You see, nothing ever makes me fat. I've always eaten everything I wanted to, and it's never had the slightest effect on me. The stony silence that followed this speech was only broken by the entrance of the butler. Mademoiselle est servie, he announced. They talked the matter over late that night, after Lena had gone to bed in Frank's room. During the evening, they had been furiously cheerful, and they had chaffed one another with a friendliness that would have taken in the keenest observer. But now they dropped the mask. Beatrice was sullen. Arrow was spiteful, and Frank was unmanned. It's not very nice for me to sit there and see her eat all the things I particularly like, said Beatrice plaintively. It's not very nice for any of us, Frank snapped back. You should never have asked her here, said Arrow. How was I to know? Cried Frank. I can't help thinking that if she really cared for her husband, she would hardly eat so much, said Beatrice. He's only been married 2 months. I mean, I think you ought to show some respect for the dead. Why can't she eat the same as we do? Asked Arrow viciously. She's a guest. Well, you heard what she said. The doctor told her she must eat. Then she ought to go to a sanatorium. It's more than flesh and blood can stand, Frank, moaned Beatrice. If I can stand it, you can stand it. She's your cousin. She's not our cousin, said Arrow. I'm not going to sit there for 14 days and watch that woman make a hog of herself. It's so vulgar to attach all this importance to food, Frank boomed, and her voice was deeper than ever. After all, the only thing that counts really is spirit. Are you calling me vulgar, Frank? Asked Arrow with flashing eyes. No, of course she isn't, interrupted Beatrice. I wouldn't put it past you to go down in the kitchen when we're all in bed and have a good square meal on the sly. Frank sprang to her feet. How dare you say that, Arrow? I'd never ask anybody to do what I'm not prepared to do myself. Have you known me all these years? And do you think me capable of such a mean thing? How is it you never take off any weight then? Frank gave a and burst into a flood of tears. What a cruel thing to say. I've lost pounds and pounds. She wept like a child. Her vast body shook and great tears splashed on her mountainous bosom. Darling, I didn't mean it, cried Arrow. She threw herself on her knees and enveloped what she could of Frank in her own plump arms. She wept and the mascara ran down her cheeks. Do you mean to say I don't look thinner? Frank sobbed. After all I've gone through? Yes, dear, of course you do, cried Arrow through her tears. Everybody's noticed it. Beatrice, though naturally of a placid disposition, began to cry gently. It was very pathetic. Indeed, it would have been a hard heart that failed to be moved by the sight of Frank, that lion-hearted woman, crying her eyes out. Presently, however, they dried their tears and had a little brandy and water, which every doctor had told them was the least fattening thing they could drink, and then they felt much better. They decided that Lena should have the nourishing food that had been ordered her, and they made a solemn resolution not to let it disturb their equanimity. She was certainly a first-rate bridge player, and after all, it was only a fortnight. They would do whatever they could to make her stay enjoyable. They kissed one another warmly and separated for the night, feeling strangely uplifted. Nothing should interfere with the wonderful friendship that had brought so much happiness into their 3 lives. But human nature is weak. You must not ask too much of it. They ate grilled fish, while Lena ate a macaroni sizzling with cheese and butter. They ate grilled cutlets and boiled spinach, while Lena ate pâté de foie gras. Twice a week they ate hard-boiled eggs and raw tomatoes, while Lena ate peas swimming in cream and potatoes cooked in all sorts of delicious ways. I'm rather fond of potatoes myself, in particular hot chips or potato bake. Potato bake. But anyway, we mustn't think about that, actually. Not because I'm on the diet, but, don't want to get myself all stirred up. I've already had chips today anyway. I had a curry and I had chips on the side as well. It's delicious. That's repeating on me. But it was delicious. The chef was a good chef. and he leapt at the opportunity afforded him to send up one dish more rich, tasty, and succulent than the other. Poor Jim, sighed Lena, thinking of her husband. He loved French cooking. The butler disclosed the fact that he could make half a dozen kinds of cocktail, and Lena informed him that the doctor had recommended her to drink Burgundy at luncheon and champagne at dinner. The three fat women persevered. They were gay, chatty, and even hilarious, such is the natural gift that women have for deception. But Beatrice grew limp and forlorn, and Arrow's tender blue eyes acquired a steely glint. Frank's deep voice grew more raucous. It was when they played bridge that the strain showed itself. They had always been fond of talking over their hands, but their discussion had been friendly. Now a distinct bitterness crept in, and sometimes one pointed out a mistake to another with quite unnecessary frankness. Discussion turned to argument, and argument to altercation. Sometimes the session ended in angry silence. Once, Frank accused Arrow of deliberately letting her down. 2 or 3 times, Beatrice, the softest of the three, was reduced to tears. On another occasion, Arrow flung down her cards and swept out of the room in a pet. Their tempers were getting frayed. Lena was the peacemaker. I think it's such a pity to quarrel over bridge, she said. After all, it's only a game. It was all very well for her. She had had a square meal and half a bottle of champagne. Besides, she had phenomenal luck. She was winning all their money. The score was put down in a book after each session, and hers mounted up day after day with unfailing regularity. Was there no justice in the world? They began to hate one another. And though they hated her too, they could not resist confiding in her. Each of them went to her separately and told her how detestable the others were. Arrow said she was sure it was bad for her to see so much of women so much older than herself. She had a good mind to sacrifice her share of the lease and go to Venice for the rest of the summer. Frank told Lena that, with her masculine mind, it was too much to expect that she could be satisfied with anyone so frivolous as Arrow and so frankly stupid as Beatrice. I must have intelligent conversation, she boomed. Oh dear God, I said that to myself only recently. Well, I understand how she feels. When you have a brain like mine, you have got to consult with your intellectual equals. Beatrice only wanted peace and quiet. Really, I hate women, she said. They're so unreliable. They're so malicious. It's actually quite true, by and large. Not everyone will understand. I have wonderful friends. Absolutely wonderful. I even have friends that I can have stimulating, intellectual and often spiritual conversations with. Thank the goddess for that. I detest being bored. It's one of the worst things that can happen to me. Up there with being humiliated in public by misfits. Anyway, where were we? Carrying on. By the time Lena's fortnight drew to its close, the three fat women were barely on speaking terms. They kept up appearances before Lena, but when she was not there, made no pretences. They had got past quarrelling. They ignored one another, and when this was not possible, treated each other with icy politeness. Lena was going to stay with friends on the Italian Riviera, and Frank saw her off by the same train as that by which she had arrived. She was taking away with her a lot of their money. It's all bloody con artists, if you ask me. Probably counted cards like Uncle Case, am I right? Oh, yes. Don't know how that works with bridge, but I've never played bridge, so I don't know. But, he would have found a way, the old bastard. I don't know how to thank you, she said, as she got into the carriage. I've had a wonderful visit. If there was one thing that Frank Hickson prided herself on more than on being a match for any man, it was that she was a gentlewoman. And her reply was perfect in its combination of majesty and graciousness. You go, Frankie girl. We've all enjoyed having you here, Lena, she said. It's been a real treat. But when she turned away from the departing train, she heaved such a vast sigh of relief that the platform shook beneath her. She flung back her massive shoulders and strode home to the villa. Oof, she roared at intervals. Oof. She changed into her one-piece bathing suit, put on her espadrilles and a man's dressing gown, no nonsense about it, and went to Eden Roke. There was still time for a bathe before luncheon. She passed through the monkey house, looking about her to say good morning to anyone she knew, for she felt on a sudden at peace with mankind, and then stopped dead still. She could not believe her eyes. Beatrix was sitting at one of the tables by herself. She wore the pyjamas she had bought at Molineux a day or two before. She had a string of pearls round her neck, and Frank's quick eye saw that she had just had her hair waved. Her cheeks, her eyes, her lips were made up. Fat, nay, vast as she was, none could deny that she was an extremely handsome woman. But what was she doing? With the slouching gait of the Neanderthal man, which was Frank's characteristic walk, she went up to Beatrice. In her black bathing dress, Frank looked like the huge cetacean which the Japanese catch in the Torres Straits and which the vulgar call a sea cow. Beatrice, what are you doing? She cried in her deep voice. It was like the roll of thunder in the distant mountains. Beatrice looked at her coolly. Eating, she said. Damn it, I can see you're eating. In front of Beatrice was a plate of croissant and a plate of butter, a pot of strawberry jam, coffee, and a jug of cream. I do love cream, but I'm lactose intolerant now and I can't always tolerate it. Sometimes, on rare occasions I can, but it's a bit touch and go, you understand. Ruins my vibe. Ruins my fucking vibe, people. Beatrice was spreading butter thick on the delicious hot bread, covering this with jam, and then pouring the thick cream over all. My girl. You'll kill yourself, said Frank. I don't care, mumbled Beatrice with her mouth full. You'll put on pounds and pounds. Go to hell. She actually laughed in Frank's face. My God, how good those croissants smelt. I really love the almond croissants when they're filled with almonds and that sort of a custardy type. Oh, I could do with one right now, actually. Yummy. Hard to find these days. I'm disappointed in you, Beatrice. I thought you had more character. It's your fault, that blasted woman. You would have her down. For a fortnight I've watched her gorge like a hog. It's more than flesh and blood can stand. I'm going to have one square meal if I bust. The tears welled up to Frank's eyes. Suddenly she felt very weak and womanly. She would have liked a strong man to take her on his knee and pet her and cuddle her and call her little baby names. Mama T needs to say what the actual fuck. She's really regressed, hasn't she? Yes. Anyway, speechless. She's... Sometimes I get like that, that's what I'm laughing about. Speechless. She sank down on a chair by Beatrice's side. A waiter came up. With a pathetic gesture, she waved towards the coffee and croissant. I'll have the same, she sighed. She listlessly reached out her hand to take a roll, but Beatrice snatched away the plate. No, you don't, she said. You wait till you get your own. Frank called her a name which ladies seldom apply to one another in affection. In a moment... Oh, that was well written, that. I love that. Which ladies seldom apply to one another in affection. You cunt. But anyway, you kind of have to laugh. In a moment, the waiter brought her croissant, butter, jam, and coffee. Where's the cream, you fool? She roared like a lioness at bay. She began to eat. She ate gluttonously. The place was beginning to fill up with bathers coming to enjoy a cocktail or two after having done their duty by the sun and the sea. Presently, Arab, strolling along with Prince Rocamere, strolled along. She had on a beautiful silk wrap which she held tightly round her with one hand in order to look as slim as possible, and she bore her head high so that he should not see. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Her double chin. Fuck it. She was laughing gaily. She felt like a girl. He had just told her, in Italian, that her eyes made the blue of the Mediterranean look like a pea soup. I think that's a compliment. Let me think about that a bit more. He left her to go into the men's room to brush his sleek black hair, and they arranged to meet in 5 minutes for a drink. Arrow walked on to the women's room to put a little more rouge on her cheeks and a little more red on her lips. On her way she caught sight of Frank and Beatrice. She stopped. She could hardly believe her eyes. "My God," she cried, "you beasts, you hogs!" She seized a chair. "Waiter!" Her appointment went clean out of her head. In the twinkling of an eye, the waiter was at her side. "Bring me what these ladies are having," she ordered. Frank lifted her great, heavy head from her plate. "Bring me some pâté de foie gras," she boomed. "Frank!" cried Beatrice. "Shut up." "All right, I'll have some too." The coffee was brought, and the hot rolls and cream, and the pâté foie gras, and they set to. They spread the cream on the pâté, and they ate it. They devoured great spoonfuls of jam. They crunched the delicious, crisp bread voluptuously. What was love to Arrow then? Let the prince keep his palace in Rome and his castle in the Apennine. They did not speak. What they were about was much too serious. They ate with solemn, ecstatic fervour. "I haven't eaten potatoes for 25 years, said Frank in a far-off, brooding tone. "Waiter," cried Beatrice, "bring fried potatoes for 3. "Très bien, madame." The potatoes were brought. Not all the perfumes of Arabia smelt so sweet. They ate them with their fingers. I used to drive my sister insane sucking on my fingers after eating fish and chips. Ha ha! I had little ways of getting revenge on the family's psychopaths and narcissists, and it's just awful, really awful. But I had to do what I could to survive them. Sometimes I survived them by my weird dietary habits, just to really unhinge them. So that was in my arsenal, people of Earth. Now I'm an asshole and I'm still fat, but kind of delicious babies. Bring me a dry martini, said Arrow. You can't have a dry martini in the middle of a meal, Arrow, said Frank. Can't I? You wait and see. All right then, bring me a double dry martini, said Frank. Bring 3 double dry martinis, said Beatrice. They were brought and drunk at a gulp. The women looked at one another and sighed. The misunderstandings of the last fortnight dissolved into the sincere affection each had for the others welled up again in their hearts. They could hardly believe that they had ever contemplated the possibility of severing a friendship that had brought them so much solid satisfaction. They finished the potatoes. I wonder if they've got any chocolate eclairs, said Beatrice. Of course they have, and of course they had. Frank thrust one hole into her huge mouth, swallowed it, and seized another, but before she ate it, she looked at the other 2 and plunged a vindictive dagger into the heart of the monstrous Lena. You can say what you like, but the truth is, she played a damned rotten game of bridge, really. Lousy, agreed Arrow. But Beatrice suddenly thought she would like a meringue. The end. Have a beautiful evening, people of Earth and fellow inhabitants of Brisbane, Australia, and what can I say? When they're off with their heads, the best you can do, darlings, is let them eat cake. I said cake. Bye for now, people of Earth.